Apparently, a lot of people have had similar visions to mine: near death experiences, out of body journeys, and other inexplicable phenomena. So I hope I don't sound too crazy when I recount how I witnessed scenes reminiscent of World War II or even the tragic events of 9/11. Whether this vision was merely symbolic or a literal foretelling of things to come, or perhaps a blend of both, I'm still uncertain. The entire city was engulfed in flames, the sky painted in a horrifying shade of orange and gray, with thick smoke billowing out from the tops of buildings. The air was thick with chaos as people ran all directions, their screams echoing through the streets. They pushed and shoved past each other, desperately trying to escape an unknown menace that loomed over us. Amidst the panic, I noticed enemy boats in the harbor, military ships that weren't ours, flying foreign flags I couldn't recognize. On the streets, soldiers roamed, some even blending in with the civilians, their true identities concealed beneath plain clothes. Suddenly, these seemingly ordinary people would turn on everyone else, transforming into aggressors in the midst of the pandemonium. It was absolute chaos, and there I stood, utterly helpless. After all, I'm just a librarian. My understanding of war is limited to the bits and pieces I've read in books. But then, amidst the turmoil, I saw him, a little boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, standing alone in the center of it all. He clutched a battered Bible tightly, holding it as if his life depended on it. His eyes met mine, wide with fear and desperation, and he called out to me, "Please, can you help me?" Without a second thought, I ran to him, driven by an inexplicable force. I felt Jesus' presence there, though he neither spoke nor touched me. It was as if he were standing right behind me, silently observing the unfolding disaster. He didn't give orders or instructions, but somehow I knew I had to help this boy. As I grabbed the boy's hand, I looked up and saw the Statue of Liberty in the distance. It was no longer standing tall. It had toppled, shattered into pieces, and the harbor was filled with smoke and debris. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just New York City falling, it was a symbol for America crumbling before my eyes. In the midst of all this chaos, I heard a faint whisper carried on the wind: "Mystery Babylon." I didn't have time to process its meaning as the boy yanked on my arm, urgently insisting we had to leave. Soldiers were everywhere, shouting orders and dragging people out of buildings. I saw a woman trying to fend off a soldier, screaming that she wasn't a traitor. It was then that the horrifying realization struck me. This wasn't just some foreign invasion. Many of these soldiers weren't even foreign. They were Americans, people from within our own nation turning against each other. I tightened my grip on the boy and began to run, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Let me tell you a little about myself before diving deeper into this ordeal. My name is Angela, and I'm a library manager in a small town outside Albany, New York. I'm 43 years old, unmarried, without children, just me and my books. I've always been a quiet person, finding comfort in my routines, waking up early, making a strong cup of coffee, opening the library, and helping patrons find whatever they're searching for. My life has never been particularly exciting, but it's steady and predictable, and I've always appreciated that stability. The day this vision occurred felt like any other. I was shelving books in the nonfiction section, specifically in the history aisle. I think one title caught my eye, something about ancient empires and their inevitable downfall. As I reached for the book, I suddenly felt lightheaded, which was strange because I hadn't skipped lunch or exerted myself in any unusual way. I reached out to steady myself on the cart, but everything went black in an instant. It wasn't exactly passing out. It was more like being pulled away from reality in one moment and transported to another the next. And when I awoke, I wasn't in the library anymore. I found myself standing in the middle of New York City, but it didn't feel like real life. Everything was hyper vivid: the colors, the sounds, the oppressive heat from the fires. It felt more real than real, if that makes any sense. I remember thinking, why am I here? I'm not a city person. I've only been in New York a couple of times, and that was years ago. But there I was in what seemed like the end of the world. Here's the thing: I'm not brave. I'm not a hero. If something bad happens, my first instinct is to hide until it's over. Standing there watching the chaos unfold, I felt completely useless. What was I supposed to do? I'm a librarian. Yes, I can organize your summer reading list, but wars and invasions, that's beyond me. Then, amidst my feelings of helplessness, I saw Eli, that little boy, clutching his Bible like it was his only lifeline. Something inside me shifted. I didn't feel brave exactly, but I felt called to do something, even if I didn't know what. As I stood there trying to make sense of everything, I began to notice details I hadn't initially. There were foreign soldiers, sure, but a significant number of the people wreaking havoc weren't foreign at all. They were Americans. I saw one man yelling at a crowd, ranting about how this country had it coming. It was like a gut punch. These weren't just enemies from the outside, they were traitors from within. People who had decided that tearing everything down was better than trying to fix it. I couldn't help but wonder, is this what we've become as a nation? So divided that we destroy ourselves from the inside out? But there was no time to dwell on these thoughts. Eli was pulling on my arm, his tears streaming down his face as he begged, I don't know where they are. They ran. I couldn't abandon him. Taking his hand, I said the only thing I could think of, we'll figure it out, okay? Just stick with me. As we started moving, dodging soldiers and weaving through alleys, I realized this wasn't just a physical war. It was a spiritual war, too. You could feel it in the air, the fear, the anger, the betrayal. It wasn't just New York falling. It was something bigger, something deeper. I didn't understand it all at the time, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about the city. It was about the soul of the country, perhaps even the world. New York City is loud on a good day. Honking taxis, construction noise, tourists yelling. It's part of its charm, I suppose, but this was different. The air was filled with screams and explosions, the sound of glass shattering as buildings collapsed. Smoke rose from the streets in thick columns, twisting into the sky and blocking out the sun. People ran everywhere, some trying to escape, others looting stores or smashing windows just because they could. Through it all, foreign soldiers marched like they owned the place. It didn't take long to figure out that the real threat wasn't just the soldiers. The city was tearing itself apart from the inside. I saw people turning on each other, neighbors fighting in the streets, mobs pulling down anyone who looked like they had anything worth taking. And then there were the traitors. I remember seeing a man in a suit handing a set of keys to a soldier who clearly wasn't American. He smiled, shook the soldier's hand, and pointed toward a barricade. These weren't random people. They were organized. They had plans. It made me feel sick to my stomach. Eli and I were running down a side street when we heard an awful cracking sound. We stopped and looked toward the harbor where the Statue of Liberty was supposed to stand. Instead of standing tall, it was leaning precariously, about to fall. It hit the water with a deafening crash, sending waves rippling toward the shore. For a second, everything went silent. It was like the city was holding its breath, watching its symbol of freedom sink beneath the waves. In that moment, I heard it again. Mystery Babylon. I didn't grow up super religious, but I knew enough to understand the reference. Mystery Babylon, the great city that falls in the book of Revelation. Fallen is Babylon the Great, I heard. I looked around at the chaos, the destruction, the people turning on each other, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was it. This was what those verses were talking about. America wasn't just a country, it was an empire. And like every empire before it, we'd grown too proud, too comfortable, too corrupt. We turned a corner and almost ran straight into a group of people blocking the street. At first, I thought they were protesters, but then I saw the weapons in their hands. Makeshift clubs, bats, even kitchen knives. They weren't fighting the soldiers, they were working with them, helping them round up anyone who might resist. I pulled Eli back into the shadows, my heart pounding. How did we get here? How did we become a country where people could turn on each other so easily? As we hid, I started seeing things I can't really explain. It was like the smoke from the fires wasn't just smoke, it was showing me something. I saw Wall Street in flames, the stock market collapsing into rubble. I saw churches being looted, their stained glass shattered, and their altars overturned. I saw people partying in the midst of destruction, celebrating as if they didn't care that the world was falling apart. And then I saw the inscription, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. It was like it was written in the air, glowing faintly above the city. Why is this happening? Eli asked, his voice shaking. I didn't know what to tell him. All I could do was hold his hand and say, we'll get through this. We just had to keep moving. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't just an attack. It was a reckoning. As we moved through the city, dodging soldiers and smoke, I kept hearing that phrase in my head. Mystery Babylon. It wasn't just about New York. It was about everything we'd built, everything we'd taken for granted, the wealth, the power, the pride. And now it was all coming down. I thought the worst part would be the soldiers, the foreign invaders storming the city and taking what wasn't theirs. But I was wrong. The real nightmare was the people I thought were supposed to be on our side. Eli and I were trying to cross an intersection when we saw them. At first, I thought they were just regular people trying to survive like everyone else, but then I saw one of them pull a gun and point it at a man hiding behind a car. The man yelled, motioning to the soldiers behind him. He's trying to get away. I froze. These weren't foreign troops, they were locals. Americans betraying their own neighbors. We ducked behind a broken down bus, my heart pounding as I peeked out to watch the collaborators hand over more people to the soldiers. One of them, a woman with a clipboard, was barking orders like she was running a business. "Check that building," she said, pointing to an apartment complex. "There's a group hiding in the basement." The soldiers listened and moved accordingly. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I know, why would someone do this? What could possibly make someone betray their own people? I felt that familiar presence again. Jesus was there, watching but not speaking. And then it hit me. These people weren't just scared. They were greedy, power hungry, willing to trade their morals for a bit of control in a world falling apart. It wasn't the soldiers destroying us, it was us. It wasn't just a few people, the betrayal was everywhere. As we moved through the city, the pattern became clear. The invaders couldn't have done this alone. They didn't need to. The traitors were the ones opening doors, pointing out hiding places, sabotaging defenses. It wasn't just heartbreaking, it was infuriating. How did we get here? How did we become a nation so divided that we turn on each other so easily? I felt Jesus' presence again, stronger this time, and I realized this wasn't just a physical war, it was spiritual. It wasn't just about soldiers and weapons, it was about hearts and souls. The betrayal wasn't just about survival, it was about a deeper corruption, a turning away from everything good and right. We passed a group of people, and for a moment, I saw something different. One of them, a young man in his 20s, hesitated. He was holding a flashlight, pointing out a building to the soldiers, but his hand was shaking. For a split second, he looked at me. Our eyes met, and I saw it. Guilt, regret. I don't know what happened to him, but it gave me a tiny bit of hope. Maybe not everyone was too far gone. As we moved farther from the soldiers, I realized something that made my stomach turn. The invaders weren't the real enemy. The real threat was the division, the selfishness, the betrayal. The foreign troops might have started this, but it was the traitors from within tearing us apart. And that was the scariest part of all. Outside of these dark thoughts swirling in my head, we just made it out of another alley, but then the city shifted. I don't mean physically, everything was still burning and collapsing. It was more like the air around us changed. Everything became quieter, heavier, like I was walking through water instead of air. Eli grabbed my hand tighter, his little face looking up at me with fear. He asked, "What's happening?" I didn't know how to answer. Ahead of us, the city seemed to light up, not from the fires, but from something else entirely. A golden glow rose up, spreading across the skyline. It wasn't comforting. If anything, it made my skin crawl. In the glow, I started to see symbols, words, images, a woman dressed in scarlet sitting on a throne, holding a golden cup that shimmered as if filled with jewels. But the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't jewels at all, it was blood. Then there were the words glowing faintly in the smoke-filled air, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. As I stared, the images shifted, overlaying the city around us. I saw the financial district, the skyscrapers of Wall Street glowing with the same golden light, but underneath the surface I saw rot, cracks in the glass, shadows moving as if alive. The stock ticker ran across one building, but instead of numbers, it flashed words: greed, corruption, power. The vision moved to Times Square. The glowing advertisements turning grotesque. Faces grinned down from billboards, but their smiles were too wide, their eyes empty. Crowds pushed and shoved, desperate for things they didn't need. Then I saw the churches, and they weren't glowing with golden light. They were dark and abandoned, their doors hanging open like mouths screaming in silence. Inside, I could see overturned altars, smashed crosses, and pews covered in dust. It wasn't just that people had left, it was that they had turned their backs completely. In the distance, the Statue of Liberty lay broken in the harbor, her torch flickering faintly before going out completely. I heard the words again, like a whisper in the wind. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. This wasn't just about New York, it was about everything: our wealth, our power, our pride. Everything we had built was crumbling, not just because of the invaders, but because we'd let it rot from the inside out. Eli tugged on my hand, his voice trembling. Is this our fault? I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, like all the air had been sucked out of the city. Jesus was there again, his presence heavy but silent. He didn't need to say anything. The truth was already clear. We had put our faith in the wrong things: money, power, convenience. We had turned away from what was good and right, and this was the price. The golden glow grew brighter, almost blinding, and then everything began to fall. Buildings crumbled into dust, bridges collapsed into the water, and the city was swallowed by fire and smoke. I held Eli close, shielding him as best I could, but there was nowhere to hide from what was happening. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the glow disappeared. The city was still burning, but the golden light was gone. All that was left was the smoke, the rubble, and the faint echoes of people crying out. I turned to Jesus, tears streaming down my face. Is this it? Is it too late? He didn't respond, but his gaze said enough. This wasn't just a warning, it was a reckoning. Whether it was too late depended on us. I looked down at Eli, who was staring at the broken city with wide eyes. We have to keep going. We can't stay here. He nodded, clutching his Bible tighter. As we started moving again, I felt a strange mix of grief and hope. Grief for what we'd lost, hope for what might still be saved. The streets were eerily silent now, the sounds of destruction replaced by a haunting stillness. The once bustling avenues were now littered with the debris, abandoned vehicles, and the remnants of lives abruptly interrupted. I could still see the towering skyscrapers, the glass facades shattered, reflecting the dim light of a sky still heavy with smoke. Every step we took was weighted with the enormity of what had transpired. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all, searching for any semblance of normalcy in this nightmare. As we walked, memories of my life before the vision flashed before me. The smell of old books, the quiet slash of regular patrons seeking knowledge and solace within the walls of countless stories. It seemed like a lifetime ago, yet it felt so close. I wonder how fragile our reality truly was, how quickly everything could change in an instant. The stability I had cherished was now replaced with uncertainty and fear. Eli, sensing my turmoil, looked up at me with those innocent, trusting eyes. Angela, do you think we'll find my family? His voice was barely above a whisper, tinged with desperation. I squeezed his hand gently, trying to muster the strength to comfort him. Oh no, Eli. But I promise, we'll keep looking. As we continue our journey, the landscape around us seemed to shift and morph, blending reality with the surreal elements of the vision. The streets twisted in unnatural ways, buildings leaning at impossible angles, their foundations unstable. The shadows danced menacingly on the walls, and the air was thick with an oppressive sense of foreboding. It was as if the very fabric of the city had been torn apart, leaving behind a distorted reflection of its former self. The presence of Jesus remained constant, a silent guardian watching over us. His presence provided a semblance of comfort amidst the chaos, a beacon of hope in the darkness. I could feel his strength bolstering my own, giving me the courage to press forward despite the overwhelming fear. As we navigated through the twisted streets, I couldn't help but notice the profound silence that had fallen over the city. The usual cacophony of urban life was replaced by an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant sounds of crumbling buildings and the occasional muffled cries of those still trapped in the nightmare. It was a stark contrast to the earlier pandemonium, creating a sense of unease that gnawed at my very soul. We came upon a park that had once been a vibrant oasis in the heart of the city. Now it lay desolate, the playground equipment twisted and broken, the swings swaying eerily in the still air. The once green grass was now scorched and barren, and the trees stood as skeletal remnants of their former selves. Eli looked around, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. What happened here? He asked, his voice trembling. I knelt down beside him, trying to find the right words. Something terrible happened, Eli. We need to keep moving and stay safe. As we rose to continue our journey, I felt a sudden gust of wind, carrying with it a faint whisper. Rebuild, it seemed to say. Rebuild and restore. The words echoed in my mind, intertwining with the haunting refrain of Mystery Babylon. It was a paradoxical message. Destruction and the call for rebuilding coexisting in the same breath. Our path led us to what used to be a bustling marketplace, now reduced to rubble and ashes. Stalls were overturned, goods scattered across the ground, and the once lively chatter replaced by an oppressive silence. As we made our way through the debris, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss for the lives that had been abruptly shattered, the dreams that had been crushed in the wake of the chaos. In the distance, I saw a flicker of movement, someone moving against the current of destruction. It was a woman, her face streaked with dirt and tears, desperately trying to carry a child to safety. Her movements were frantic, her breaths shallow with exhaustion and fear. Without thinking, I reached out to help, pulling her aside from the path of danger. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice soft but urgent. She looked up at me, eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and desperation. "Please, help me. My child is trapped under those rubble." Instinctively, I moved to assist her, but before I could act, a soldier appeared, his weapon drawn and a menacing expression on his face. "Move along," he ordered, his voice cold and authoritative. I felt a surge of anger and helplessness. "We can't just leave people like this," I protested, stepping in front of the woman and child. The soldier's eyes hardened, and he advanced towards us, his intent clear. "Stay out of this," he warned. But before he could reach us, a loud crash echoed through the area, diverting his attention. Seizing the moment, I grabbed the woman's hand and led her away, guiding her towards a safer path. As we moved, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all part of a larger, more sinister plan, a test of our humanity, our capacity for compassion in the face of overwhelming adversity. The city's descent into chaos was not just a physical collapse, but a moral one, challenging the very core of our values and beliefs. We found a momentary refuge in an abandoned building, the walls scarred by fire and the windows shattered. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of smoke and the remnants of past lives. I took a moment to catch my breath, the enormity of the situation pressing down on me. The woman, clutching her child tightly, looked at me with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, offering a small reassuring smile despite the turmoil raging within me. "It's okay. We'll find a way out of here." As we settled into the dimly lit space, I couldn't help but reflect on the events that had led us here. The vision felt like a culmination of all the societal fractures and divisions that had been festering beneath the surface finally erupted into a full-blown catastrophe. The betrayal from within, the internal conflicts, had amplified the external threats, creating the perfect storm of destruction and despair. Eli, sensing my contemplative mood, looked up at me with a question in his eyes. "Angela, why did this happen? Why did everyone turn against each other?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Sometimes when people lose hope or become consumed by their own fears and desires, they make choices that harm not just themselves, but everyone around them. It's a reminder of how important it is to stay connected, to support each other even in the darkest times. His young face showed understanding beyond his years, and it gave me a sliver of hope amidst the bleakness. Perhaps, even in the midst of such chaos, there was a chance for redemption, for rebuilding not just the physical structures, but the very fabric of our society. As the hours passed, the atmosphere within the abandoned building remained tense but not devoid of hope. The woman and her child eventually found a safe path out, reuniting with others who had managed to escape the worst of the destruction. Each encounter, each act of kindness amidst the chaos, served as a beacon of humanity fighting against the encroaching darkness. We continued our journey the encroaching darkness. We continued our journey through the shattered city, each step a testament to resilience and the will to survive. The landscape around us was a twisted mirror of New York's former glory, now a playground for destruction and despair. Yet, amidst the ruins, there were moments of profound beauty, sunlight breaking through the smoke, casting ethereal beams that illuminated pockets of hope within the devastation. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a blood-red hue across the sky, we found ourselves atop a hill overlooking the city. The sight was both breathtaking and terrifying. The entire skyline, once a symbol of human achievement, now a silhouette of broken dreams and fallen structures. The Statue of Liberty, though shattered, stood as a poignant reminder of what once was and what could have been. Sitting beside me, Eli gazed out over the city, his small hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Do you think we can fix this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked down at him, feeling the weight of responsibility and the flicker of hope burning within me. I believe we can start by rebuilding ourselves, by holding on to what makes us human: compassion, empathy, and the will to help each other. It's not going to be easy, but together we can make a difference. His eyes sparkle with a mixture of determination and innocence, a beacon of hope in the midst of darkness. As night fell, the stars began to emerge, twinkling above the chaotic city like distant promises of a better future. The presence of Jesus remained a comforting shadow, a silent guardian, reminding me that even in the darkest times, there is always a glimmer of light. Days turned into weeks as we navigated the transformed city, searching for others who had survived the initial onslaught. Each day brought new challenges: avoiding soldiers and collaborators, finding safe passages through the wreckage, and helping those in need. The bonds we formed with fellow survivors became our lifeline, a testament to the enduring human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. One afternoon, as we made our way through what used to be Central Park, now a desolate wasteland, we stumbled upon a group of survivors huddled around a makeshift campfire. They were wary at first, their eyes darting with suspicion and fear. But as we approached, the leader, a middle-aged man with weary eyes, stepped forward. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice rough from days without proper nourishment. "I'm Angela, and this is Eli," I replied, trying to convey sincerity. "We're just trying to survive and help each other." He studied us for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, we could use more people willing to help. Come join us." As we integrated into their group, I felt a sense of belonging that had been absent since the vision began. Together, we organized patrols to scout for resources, established communication lines with other survivor groups, and provided support to those who were injured or traumatized by the events. Despite the constant danger and uncertainty, moments of camaraderie and shared purpose emerged. We shared stories of our lives before the chaos, finding solace in the memories of happier times. These interactions strengthened our resolve, reminding us that even in the bleakest of circumstances, the human spirit could find ways to endure and persevere. One night, as we gathered around the campfire, the leader shared a story that resonated deeply with me. We are witnessing the fall of what some call Mystery Babylon, a great city brought down by its own excesses and corruption. But this doesn't have to be our end. We can learn from our mistakes and rebuild a better society, one founded on trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. His words echo the message from my vision, reinforcing the idea that this catastrophe was not just a physical battle, but a moral and spiritual one as well. It was a call to action, a plea to reclaim our humanity and rebuild from the ashes of our former selves. As the weeks turned into months, our group grew, drawing in individuals from all walks of life who shared the common goal of survival and reconstruction. We established a makeshift governance system, ensuring that decisions were made collectively and that everyone's voice was heard. The principles of fairness, justice, and compassion became the foundation upon which we built our new community. The process was arduous and fraught with challenges. We faced shortages of food and medical supplies, threats from hostile groups, and the ever-present danger of another attack. Yet, through it all, the bonds we formed and the shared sense of purpose kept us moving forward. We learned to adapt, to innovate, and to find strength in our unity. One particularly challenging day, a severe storm swept through the area, bringing torrential rain and fierce winds that threatened to tear apart our fragile settlement. The storm damaged our makeshift shelters, displacing many and putting our food and water supplies at risk. Panic set in as we realized the extent of the damage. I found myself at the forefront of the response, coordinating rescue efforts and distributing limited resources to those in need. The weight of responsibility bore down on me, but the presence of Jesus, that silent guardian, provided a sense of calm and determination. I knew that despite the overwhelming odds, we had to persevere. As the storm raged on, I worked tirelessly alongside my fellow survivors, helping to rebuild what had been destroyed and providing comfort to those who were frightened and weary. The experience brought us closer, strengthening our resolve to overcome any obstacle that stood in our way. In the aftermath of the storm, as we surveyed the damage and began the arduous task of rebuilding, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. We had weathered the storm together, both literally and metaphorically, emerging stronger and more united than before. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of community in the face of adversity. Months passed and our community continued to grow and thrive despite the ongoing challenges. We established gardens to cultivate our own food, repaired and fortified our shelters, and even set up a rudimentary education system for the children among us. Eli, ever the inquisitive child, became a source of inspiration and joy, his unwavering optimism a beacon of hope for everyone around him. One evening, as the sun set over our rebuilt community, casting a warm golden glow across the landscape, I found myself reflecting on the journey we had undertaken. The vision that had seemed like an insurmountable nightmare had, in a way, become a catalyst for profound change and growth. It had forced us to confront our deepest fears and flaws, ultimately leading us to a path of redemption and renewal. As I sat beside Eli, watching him play with the other children under the fading light, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The horrors of the past were not forgotten, but they served as a constant reminder of the importance of compassion, unity, and the unwavering pursuit of a better future. The presence of Jesus, though still silent, felt more tangible than ever, a guiding force leading us towards healing and restoration. One day, as we were organizing a community meeting to discuss future plans and strategies, the leader approached me with a solemn expression. Angela, your vision. It wasn't just a nightmare, it was a message, a call to action. You helped us see what we needed to change and how we needed to rebuild. We're grateful for your leadership and guidance. I looked at him, feeling a mixture of humility and gratitude. I was just doing what I felt was right. We all played a part in this journey, and together we've created something meaningful out of the ashes. His words resonated deeply, affirming the belief that despite the immense challenges, humanity had the capacity to rise above its flaws and rebuild a world grounded in empathy and mutual respect. The journey was far from over, but the progress we had made was a testament to the enduring power of hope in the human spirit. As time went on, our community became a symbol of resilience and hope in the midst of a broken world. Stories of our survival and efforts to rebuild spread, inspiring others to rebuild, spread, inspiring others to join us or form their own communities based on similar principles. The ripple effect of our actions began to heal the fractured society, slowly mending the wounds inflicted by years of division and conflict. One morning, as the first light of dawn broke through the lingering smoke in the sky, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The lessons from my vision had not only saved our community, but had also ignited a movement towards rebuilding a better, more unified world. The vision had been a harbinger of destruction, but it had also been a catalyst for transformation and renewal. Sitting on the steps of our community center, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of pink and gold, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had led us to a place of hope and possibility. The presence of Jesus, ever present yet silent, seemed to affirm that we were on the right path, guided by a higher purpose and the collective strength of our community. Eli approached me, his face glowing with the innocence and hope of youth. Angela, do you think there are others out there who need our help? I smiled, the weight of the past and the promise of the future bouncing within me. I believe there are. And together, we'll reach out to them, just as we reached out to each other in the beginning. As we embarked on the next phase of our journey, extending our hand to those in need and building bridges of compassion and understanding, I realized that the vision, though terrifying, had ultimately led us to a place of profound transformation. It had stripped away the superficial layers of society, exposing the core of what truly mattered: our humanity, our capacity for kindness, and our unwavering hope for a better future. The story of our survival and rebuilding became a testament to the enduring human spirit, a narrative of resilience, and the relentless pursuit of a world grounded in love and mutual respect. The lessons learned from the chaos and destruction shaped our actions and decisions, ensuring that we never forgot the price of division and the value of unity. In the quiet moments of reflection, under the vast expanse of a starlit sky, I often found myself contemplating the deeper meanings behind the vision. It was a reminder that amidst the darkest of times, the light of hope and the strength of community could guide us through, leading us towards redemption and renewal. The journey was ongoing, a continuous effort to build a world where compassion and understanding prevailed over fear and division. And so as the years passed and our community continued to grow and flourish, the vision that had once seemed like an unbearable nightmare became a cherished memory, a catalyst for change and a beacon of hope for what was to come. The presence of Jesus, ever watchful and silent, remained a comforting assurance that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, there was always a path forward, illuminated by the enduring light of humanity's best qualities.